welcome to On the Pulse, episode 7. We are back after the most spectacular weekend of competition in Indianapolis, and we're going to be reviewing absolutely every single second of it. I am delighted to be joined by Tommy Marquez and Seth Page, two of the most bright minds in the sport of fitness, and obviously alongside us every step of the way out in Indianapolis. Guys, it's been a whole week. What have you been up to? I feel like I miss you already.
Well, I was looking longedly at the photos of the event of our team, just kind of thinking about all the fun times we had and looking out my window into the rain that was pouring out, just trying to get really emo with it. But in between that and catching up on a little bit of sleep, decided to go back and watch some of the stream back and pour into the leaderboards a little bit. So I'm ready to go.
I just went straight back to watch that slow-mo of Travis Mayer and Noah Olson, Smith, do with the little tap on the shoulder, Chandler Smith, as he runs fast by the buttery roast.
Oh, yeah.
So good. What about you, Seth?
I wonder if the emo feeling is the reason for the black T-shirt today, Tommy. But either way, yeah, everyone's got it but me. I'm feeling good. I'm happy to be home. I've been digesting the leaderboard, following along some of the other competitions just to kind of see how consistent maybe some of these athletes' placings were that maybe competed again another weekend. So just still taking it in. We're right in the heat of the season, so things are very interesting.
It's actually crazy that it was only a week ago because I feel like it's now months past. So with that in mind, let's take a little look at what we've got coming up in the show. Just to remind everybody, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the tour points. We've got the men's division analysis. We're going to look at that race for Copenhagen because ultimately that is what it's all about, and that pursuit for a pro card. To kick things off and to start the show, we just want to remind you of the tour points for the men, and keep in mind that there's no distinction when it comes to tour points between pro and challenger. Now we see it all on one big graphic. You can see that it's all come together in that race for a pro card. They're all on the same leaderboard. Tommy, take us through what we're looking at.
Yeah, you're seeing the total spread of points for all of the 50 points earners coming out of Indianapolis and Tour Stop 1. Towards the top, this is going to reflect the leaderboard of the pro division in Indy. You see Colton Mertens there in 9th, the top points earner from the non-signed pro athletes. And then as we work our way through the leaderboard overall and all of the points earners, you see some names kind of pop up that are part of that signed pro crew. This 11 through 20 spot, 8 of the 10 athletes occupied by signed pros. And then getting further down the leaderboard, these 21 through 30 spots represent the final few athletes from that pro division in Indy and some familiar names in unfamiliar places like Pat Vellner or even Travis Mayer. But as we get further on down the leaderboard, it's important to remember here that spots 40 and beyond and 30 and beyond, 31, excuse me, are all part of that challenger division, but they're all on that same leaderboard fighting for the same points. So even though they weren't in the same division, they're all fighting for the same points. They all earn points coming out of Indy, going towards that race for Copenhagen and that pro card once the season is done.
One thing I'll just add really quick, if you don't mind, is I don't think it can be understated enough how important these qualifiers are. So for those who don't have a pro card, these qualifier workouts, I mean, you talk about squeezing out every rep in live competition. You should be squeezing out every rep in the qualifier too, because making that cut to the top 10 in the qualifiers versus being in the challenger division, completely different in terms of your potential for gaining points. So very, very serious qualifiers, probably the highest stakes maybe we've seen in quite some time.
100% that, Seth, because I mean, if you're not already aware, the challenger division, as opposed to the challengers who move up into the pro division, have half the amount of points available to them, hence the breakdown of the leaderboard. So getting into that top 30 is utterly crucial as we look ahead to Phoenix. Okay, then let's take a little deep dive into some of the stories that came out of the men's field. And Seth, let's start with our 3rd place finisher in Jason Hopper.
Yes, we should start there actually, because I think he's kind of been overlooked just in general. So 4th at the games last year, 3rd at Rogue, and then 6th place in the Worldwide Open this year, 3rd overall in the first tour stop. That is the epitome of consistency. Yet somehow he tends to fly under the radar in terms of maybe getting coverage or people paying attention to him. And his worst finish in the entire event was 12th place. But on the flip side, he has no event wins. So he finished third with 0 event wins. And a lot of times we're very focused on those home run hitters in those events. And so sometimes it's easy to kind of glaze over Jason. But in terms of making sure that we pay attention to him moving forward, he's clearly a threat. He has beaten some of the best that have beaten him in other events. He's just always going to be a top 5 thing. But until he kind of builds that home run hitting ability, he might not be as consistent on the podium as maybe he could be. So he's going to be somebody that we expect to see over and over again in the top 10, making threats. But I want to see him develop that home run hitting ability to kind of move up and maybe take a shot at winning event overall.
Yeah, he's going to be super exciting to watch over the course of the tour stops and in Copenhagen. And another person, same camp, same crew, who came second on the podium, James Sprague. It is hard to overlook him when we go into any sort of competition. 2 event wins at the World Fitness Project. King of the assault bike, newly crowned off the back of 4B that he took the victory in. And he also got 5 top 5 finishes across the weekend. When you talk about consistency, James Sprague has to be there. But I think perhaps the moment that really solidified him as, I don't know, I'm not going to say a genuine contender because that's not really what I mean at all, because he's always a genuine contender. But when you see someone whose potential weaknesses, like the front squat, becomes a strength over the course of the off season, and it's what we saw at World Fitness Project, you go, okay, this guy isn't here just to take part. This guy's here to take the top step of the podium. You know, he's looking at the holes in his game and he's filling them, and he's only 22. And you go, that is some scary stuff when you're looking at kind of the athletic potential of someone like James Sprague. Not just that, I think he just brings this whole new kind of vibe and aura to the competition floor. And I think probably because he's come through the team division, he's got such close friendships with Dallin and Jason and Austin, and they are jovial and they joke behind the scenes, and it's not super serious all the time. And perhaps that actually is what's bringing the best out of all of them. And I'm super excited to see all of those brute boys kind of continue on over the course of the tour, because it's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah, I love that dynamic for sure.
I know, they're great. What about you, Tommy? Who's top step?
I mean, we have to look at the guy that won, right? You know, Austin Hatfield has really just been in the driver's seat for 2025, regardless of the event that he shows up in. And what really impressed me about Indianapolis is that every time he's taken the floor, he's found a new path towards to his success. You know, at Wodapalooza, he closes the weekend with a first, second, and first to get onto the podium. At Mayhem Classic, he opens with wins in 2 out of the first 3 events to really establish himself at the top and hold on. And then in Indy, it was a little bit different. He was really strong through the middle of the pack, took the overall lead coming out of day number 2, opens day 3, loses the lead to Jeff Adler. And I think everyone kind of wrote him off at that point, like maybe, oh, okay, this is where Jeff really kind of puts himself back at the top. But undeterred, he comes right back, takes second, gets ahead of some very talented guys. He got a push from Medeiros on his right. He got a push from Adler, from Pepper, from Sprague. He outduels them all, retakes the overall lead, and wins it going away. And for a young athlete who is trying to consistently place himself as a podium threat, not blinking in the face of adversity when you lose the overall lead on the final day and take it back with another top 3 finish, especially with the way that kind of event at the end plays out, to me, that just puts him, like I said, in the driver's seat for 2025. And I think he's poised for a huge season.
Execution's everything. Sorry, execution just is everything at the highest level. Like the fitness levels, you can kind of see are almost on a plane to those top guys. They all have that high level of fitness, but when it comes down time, crunch time, who can execute, who cannot make mistakes, and that workout 6 was just blew me away. So now I have to consider him the top contender forever until someone else proves him wrong.
Well, not just that, but he also came in with his CrossFit Games tickets already in hand, right? Like there was a lot of eyes on him of whether he could back up performance. And quite often performance is as much mental as it is physical. And I think he's proving time and time again that that mentality very much exists in his all-around game. So yeah, Hatfield, shake and bake, baby. Watch this space. He's going to be a big one. The first and only time I'll ever get that into a winner's interview. It was a proud moment for me.
I love it. I love it. I won't turn down a Ricky Bobby quote.
No, not in Indianapolis anyway. But Tommy, there are plenty of names on that leaderboard that I think also are worth mentioning. I'm not going to say surprised us, but really proved something to themselves.
For me, it's Justin Medeiros, right? I think it's easy to get caught up in recency bias, right? Obviously he wins the games 2 years in a row and then has, by his standards, a regression the next 2 years. But I thought we saw glimpses of what made him a two-time champ in the first half of the competition. Despite working through what I, discovered through talking with him were some nagging injuries in recent years that really kind of prevented him from his normal training prep. Things like running that were kind of a hallmark of his two title runs. I thought that the fact that he was in podium contention through most of the weekend inside the top five, really kind of signals that he's starting to get his training back on track. He had some near misses, which I actually think, despite the execution errors, are good signs, because for Justin, it means he's taking some chances. We saw him take a chance on that final Pro 6 event on the lunge, where he decided to go unbroken and failed, but saw the opportunity to maybe push himself into a podium position. The fact that he was in that position is an improvement from where he's been in the past. And I can't overstate this. The fact that he PR'd his shoulder to overhead, having to switch his feet in the split jerk relative to what he normally does because of a nagging hip injury that only showed up during that movement. He was just an inch or two away from a 395 shoulder to overhead, which, with those points on the table, puts him right back in the conversation for a top 3 spot. So even though he's outside of the top 5 and 6, for me, in retrospect, given how things played out for Justin, I think there's a lot to really get excited about moving forward.
Oh, he's such a good dude as well. And speaking of good dudes, from down under, Seth, the proven athlete, Jay Crouch, he can't call himself a dark horse anymore, I don't think, especially after that day one.
Yeah, but in the same vein as Hopper, people keep sleeping on him, right? So like, he has been around for many years now, but he's been overshadowed by Ricky and everything surrounding Ricky. And so a lot of people haven't talked about Jay enough. This weekend, or the past weekend, he started the weekend off 3rd, 2nd, and 7th in the first 3 workouts against this field, which is incredible. Even if you didn't have the rest of them to look at, just finishing in that position in the first half of competition is unbelievable. And so we already started talking about him having podium contention, but then had some rougher finishes, 19th and 12th and other workouts, where he could use maybe a little more high-end strength, high-end power output compared to some of his peers. I assume he knows that and is likely working on that. But with Jay, what I like to see and what I think should happen, because he deserves a little more attention, in my opinion, based on his performances, I'd like to see kind of a new down under rivalry. So we had Tia and Kara for years and years, right? We should have more talks about Jay and Ricky going head to head in these events. I mean, those two are battling, they're trading positions on the leaderboard. Jay's proven to be just as good as Ricky now in terms of higher level competition. So I'd like to see those two form a little rivalry, even though I think they're friends. But hey, a friendly rivalry is always good too. So that's what I'm looking for, those two battling it out.
Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that. And actually, yeah, you couldn't be more right there. They've become super close, and now that they're in the same camp and they're spending so much time together. But we will see that continue on. Speaking of that down under rivalry, let's take a little look at the men from 11 through to 20, Tommy. And right at the top of that, our man, Ricky Garrard.
Yeah, and I think for Ricky, 11th is good enough for now. I think a lot of people might had him pegged for a top 10 position and maybe even pushing, for a higher spot in that like peripheral of the podium for most of the weekend. But I think he was one of the athletes that was really feeling the after effects of having to compete multiple weekends in a row, specifically for him going in affiliate semifinals, where he had to redo a test that had 110 GHDs, and he had to do it in short order too. So you completely blow yourself out with those efforts, 220 GHDs in competition speed, and then you have to turn around and rebound right away. And we saw the after effects of that during the first 2 events, Pro 1, Pro 3, specifically two tests that I think most people would think Ricky would do really well on. And he even mentioned to me during athlete check-in, like, hey, I'm still shaking off some of these effects. I think you might actually see me get better as the weekend moves along. And that's actually what happened. He closed with his first top 5 finish in the shoulder to overhead, comes right back later on in the weekend with a 4th in the rope climb yoke on the final day. So I think for Ricky, getting inside the top 20, staying in the hunt to keep his pro card, and knowing that he's not going to have the kind of mishmash of events to have to do week in and week out going later on in the season, we should see a better version of him in Mesa.
which is only an exciting thing because an on-form Ricky Garard is a very tasty matchup for the rest of the men in the field. We know what he can do. Just behind him, Guilherme Milheiros. I think we saw the best of him, much like Ricky, as we built through the weekend. Obviously, all eyes fall to him when we go to that big overhead jerk. I can't even imagine the pressure that an athlete like him might be under when it comes to an lifting event. But it's sorry, Seth. Yeah, jump in.
No, you're dead on. The thing about Guy, and I think most people come to expect this now, is they're waiting for him to have that event that just, sets the world on fire. Everyone's watching him, everyone's excited for it. And he does that. So the first 4 or 5 workouts, he takes 26th to open, then 3rd, then 19th, then 2nd, then 25th. And if that's not the most Guy thing you've ever heard, I don't know what is, right? So he's up and down all the time like that, but he capitalizes on the places that he really can score those points, which allows him to stay, in contention, at least middle of the field. If we're talking about continuing to earn pro cards, you have to be able to hit those home runs to earn those points. And with Guy also, we a lot of people follow him on social media. We see him doing all types of different fitness ventures. He's not super specific in terms of his competitive fitness just in this realm. He's doing other things. So people are a little unsure whether to pick him or not. But when he comes through, hits those home runs, it's great. Taking home, 12th place points against this field is absolutely crazy. And one more thing that could have moved him up the leaderboard even more, he got a lot of costly no reps on workout number 3 with the front squats. He was moving the weight literally so fast that they couldn't tell if he was standing all the way up or not. And they were just calling him no reps. So when someone has that kind of speed and power with a barbell, always a threat. So again, if he had made those look a little more smooth, maybe he'd be in the top 10. So who knows?
Well, you can come back at the next round and start working on stepping up that leaderboard, which is super exciting. And speaking of those kind of athletes, Tommy, Chris Ibarra, he only went and punched his ticket to the CrossFit Games this weekend, a week after this hugely intense competition in the World Fitness Project. What impressed you the most about him this weekend?
Well, these are the storylines that I love, right? The athletes that are able to consistently claw their way up higher and higher on the rungs of the elite leaderboards. And, Chris finished 10th in the qualifier. He only made the pro division by 1 point ahead of Tudor Magda. And this is a pro division where we didn't have any backfills because everyone showed up. So it was really important that he made it through that qualifier. And how does he respond? He finishes 16th in Indianapolis. And more importantly, in that race for Copenhagen, he is 2nd in points behind Colton Mertens as the 2nd highest finisher in that pro division for the athletes that had to qualify. So he took the ball and ran with it a little bit. And if he's able to replicate that at Mesa, I think he's in a great spot to go to Copenhagen just by qualifying. But I also think he is pretty darn near a shoe-in if he replicates this for a pro card for the following season. And for an athlete that just made it into the upper echelons of this sport last season through his performance at the West Regional, I think that would be a huge boost for him to be able to have that consistent high-level performance and knowing he's going to show up to compete with the best, multiple times a season in 2026. And, as I go back to one of my favorite movies, the original Fast and the Furious, Dom Toretto said, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning is winning. And 1 point was all the difference for someone like Chris Ibarra and potentially setting himself up for the rest of the season and earning that pro card, which for an athlete at this stage would just be huge.
Of course there was a movie reference in there. Why wouldn't there be? Well, I've spent a huge amount of this weekend alongside Chris Ibarra. And over the last 3 weekends, he's literally given absolutely everything he can possibly give. I've not seen someone dig that deep and work that hard to, perform on all fronts in the sport of fitness. And I think we can be really excited, given he's only got 1 CrossFit Games under his belt and 1 tour stop, about where he can go as an athlete and his trajectory.
But, yeah, and he won $100 off Olivia Kerstetter. So anytime you could walk off the competition floor and take a crisp C note from one of your training partners, I mean, that's a win for the week, in my opinion.
Honestly, he's recruiting everyone to Proven now. He's just like, I'm just round the back of these competitions being like, come and join me and Olivia at Proven with Tim Paulson. It's great. But it's, lush, lovely human. Really excited to see where he's going to go in this sport. And speaking of lovely humans, Seth Page, Chandler Smith, So good to see him back and so close to his best. 14th with so much potential for more.
Well, yeah, I do think you nailed it with that. 14th is kind of the lowest I expect to see Chandler on the leaderboard overall. He's a games veteran of many years. He's been team individual. He's done pretty well at Rogue. He's proven that he can really, step up to this level of competition. He doesn't shy away from it. And while he does it, he likes to have a good time. So you see him really loosening up the mood, whether it's behind the scenes during the in the warm-up area with other athletes, or whether he's even on the floor, like you had mentioned earlier, playing games of tag with Travis Mayer or during a very intense event. So he's able to mix it up and kind of keep his composure, which I think is a huge development for him over the years. I think that was one of the things he developed over time was his mental game. He's always had amazing physical attributes. He's always a threat to be a big power output guy, max strength guy. And if you see in an event like at Mesa, which again, I have no advanced knowledge of any of the programming coming up at Mesa, but we saw a shoulder or split jerk, right? Overhead. That's not a strong movement for Chandler. Let's say they go opposite and they do a heavy deadlift at Mesa. Well, you're going to see Chandler then take 100 points, right? So 14th, I think, is the worst we're going to see him really at any tour stop, assuming he's making this a priority in his training, which I believe that he is. So yeah, I mean, Chandler's always a threat. I think 14th's not bad, but he has a lot of room to move up.
I appreciate this is a little off topic, but my favorite thing coming out of WFP is the amount of pressure he's putting on Noah Olsen to run so they can go to the Hyrox World Championships together and actually be competitive. Like he's all in on making sure he can get Noah around that course.
That's a great point. So now you have that super strong, super powerful athlete now prioritizing a little bit more of the endurance side of things too, and that's coming out as well. So when you have him actually prioritizing weaknesses, whether he's having fun at a different type of event or whatever, that's only going to benefit him. His overall strength is not going anywhere if you know Chandler.
Oh yeah. Tommy, there was a number of youngsters too that perhaps we're not used to seeing on this bigger stage who kind of really came to the fore and were able to hold their own. And in my mind, I'm jumping immediately to Switzerland's Colin Bosshardt. Like he hasn't had a huge amount of experience at this level, but he's right in the thick of things between 21 and 30. And he's got that first one under his belt.
Yeah, and I think you should get used to this name. One, because he's already won the IF3 World Championships. Two, he's already earned his ticket to the games this season. And three, this WFP Tour Stop 1 in Indy was the third weekend in a row that he was competing. So he went to Spain for Wildland Fest, came back, did in-affiliate semifinals, and turned around and showed up to Indy and threw down. And I think for him, fitting in 24th, given the sheer volume and travel that he had to fit into such a tight window, I think for him, we're only going to expect better moving forward down the line. Now, I think as his focus narrows a little bit and he's not having to travel that much and he can understand that he's going to get another high-level competition in the games before Mesa, I think for him that's just going to only enrich his overall competition experience and confidence on the floor, because he didn't have the benefit of being with a lot of the top dogs. He was one of the early heats right on. And at that point, you start to adjust your kind of goal. If you know, hey, I don't have my best, but I'm in this early heat, what's the best that I can do here? Push the front of my heat, try and win my heat each time. And we saw that in a few events. And he even was able to put a couple of top 10 performances on the leaderboard. So for him, I think it's all a learning experience as he builds momentum into August. And I would expect to see a different athlete then.
From youngsters in Europe, Seth, to youngsters across the pond in the USA, who's on your mind?
Yeah, Nate Ackerman, young guy who's definitely taking a big bet on himself, really kind of going all in on this particular tour stop here. 88th in the Worldwide Open this year. He's competed as an individual at semifinals, both 2023 and 2024, but not super strong finishes there. In my opinion, from a coaching perspective, he's a little undersized to play with some of these guys. So I think he needs to take a little more time to develop his size and his overall strength. I think that would help him tremendously because he's not lacking in fitness. He's not lacking in skills. He can hang with just about anyone in other areas, but I think he weighs in at about 170 pounds, which is a troublesome weight when you need to move these loads that they're asking the pros to move. And the other thing about him is I think just recently he's actually joined up with Mayhem Athlete, which is I think it's a positive thing for someone his age, because what he's going to see first, he's going to get some good tutelage under coaches, but also he's going to be around other high level, pro level athletes. And so when you train with those type of people, you start to see what the standard needs to be. And so if constantly in training he's underperforming compared to his peers, one of two things needs to happen. He's either going to grow up and have his breakout and start being a real threat in the pro division, or he'll possibly fizzle out trying to get bigger and get stronger and do all that. But when you're around that level of competition, that's kind of probably his best bet to try to find his ceiling and his potential here. And so we'll either see a breakout from him in coming years, or maybe we'll see him disappear. I don't know. But my opinion is he just needs to get a little bigger and maybe a little more experience.
And Seth, that's always been the case for the teenage boys going into becoming teenage or now men in the individual men competition, right? There is definitely a weight difference. There is a density difference, if you will, in terms of how you're able to handle the heavier loads for repeated reps for all the way up to the 1 rep max lifts. And we saw with even some guys that are now at the top, and Dallin and James, early on when they're making the jump, they just didn't have that man weight that just seems to kind of show up around 21, 22, 23. And then suddenly, bam, they're right towards the front as they stuck with it and kept their nose to the grindstone. So if Nate does that, he certainly has a lot of the, I guess, the competitive DNA to do that.
100% agree. Yeah.
Just to give a little bit more context around Nate at the moment, actually after last year's semifinals, he stepped away from the sport completely and he wasn't sure he was going to come back. So he's spent a huge part of this year building into the World Fitness Project, not training and just living life as a regular 21-year-old. And about 4 months ago, something changed. He realized he missed it. He went straight back into those mayhem doors, and he's managed to get up to this height of fitness within a couple of months. And I think there are very few people in the world who have the capacity to be able to do that. So I feel like when we're looking at Nate Ackerman, not only are we looking at like a 21-year-old who's just finding his feet, but we're also looking at someone who's just finding his way back to his top end of fitness as well. So, and I've also never seen anyone rope climb in quite the way that Nate is capable of. He is insane on upper body pulling. So yeah, keep your eye on him because he's got plenty of years ahead to be very, very good at this. But there were some names that perhaps didn't live up to their own expectations. Tommy, Seth, who am I talking about?
I guess I'll go first. So we have to talk about Uncle Pat Vellner, right? He's been around the sport forever. And I've had an opportunity to know him across many years, had many conversations with him, including this past weekend. Let me just give a little perspective on Pat. I know most people know him, but 9 times Games athlete, 9 times, okay? 5 times on the podium at the CrossFit Games. Did not too many other people we can talk about that have done that. Worst finish ever, 16th. Okay. And now we're talking about somebody who just finished 2nd at Wodapalooza this year, beating Austin Hatfield. He's got a win at Rogue within the last couple of years. I mean, the guy is one of the best. I think I called him one of the 4 men I'd put on the Mount Rushmore of competitive fitness. And he's up there for me. And so I think a lot of people are having a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to his 23rd place finish overall for this first tour stop. You can't write him off yet. Okay. He could have, who knows what's going on. He's not training full time. He's got a family. He's got a career. He's got all kinds of stuff going on. He's trying to make this part of his life. Whereas some of the young guns who are coming up get to make this a full-time part of their life. So you never count Pat out. You don't know how prepared, I do know how prepared he can get between now and end of August for Mesa. And I know that's really in his sights. And if he didn't think he could still do this at the highest level, I don't believe he would continue to play. So I think Pat's always going to be a contender. I think Pat's going to he does have home run hitting abilities when it comes to certain workouts. Do not count him out. I mean, everyone deserves to have a hiccup now and then. Overall, bad weekends happen. He will be back. That's really all I have to say about that. I mean, he's a legend. So yeah.
Yeah. I actually think legend is an understatement, as is with Travis Mayer, Tommy. Like, legend is an understatement, and he's still at the top of his game. And sometimes the odd result, especially when you're trying to manage an injury, shouldn't be looked into too much.
Yeah. And like, let's put this into perspective, right? Travis Mayer first qualified for the games in 2013. how many people even knew what CrossFit was back in 2013, right? And he's been at this level for the larger part of 14 seasons since he broke through to that level. That doesn't even count the time spent training to get to that in the first place. And now, unfortunately, he finished 27th. He had to withdraw. He was able to keep the points that he earned along the way, which still finishing 27th is important because in this race, for the pro card next year, knowing that he was already assigned pro and he gets access to Copenhagen is important because every point is going to matter at the end of the day. Now, he's already said and gone on social media that he is on the mend and he has his sights set for August, and he is focused and dialed in on being back at 100% for Mesa. And I honestly have to believe, based on the history that we've seen across his career, that he's more than capable of doing that. Because you go back to 2015, after 2 qualifications to the games, he misses out, finishes well outside of the cut line. What does he do? He comes back in 2016, epic final event at the Atlantic Regional to make him to get back to the games and kind of quiet some of the haters. 2017, he goes to the final event outside of a top 5, which was then the cut line to go back to the games. His alter ego Trevor shows up and he just basically blacks out and wins the event and moves up into the top 5 to go back to the games again. And it seems like every time his back is against the wall, whether it's an injury, when he had a knee injury a few years ago, he finds a way to come back a little bit better than ever. And it's this kind of this long view of the sport and how he approaches training with his coach, Max Alage. And I think that's what's ultimately going to allow him to be successful again because of that experience and because of that ability to put things into perspective.
Travis also has he's one of the few athletes that I can look back through the years on and say he's got that ability to turn it on when it really matters. Guys like him, Con Porter, others from the past that are oh, they have to do this big thing or else they're done. And then wouldn't you know it, they do that big thing. And so he's one of the few that can do that and come out of nowhere when people don't expect him to. He's got crazy muscular endurance. The things he can do are unreal when he's totally healthy. So again, if he gets the right programming, he's healthy, he's looking good, at another threat to take a bunch of points.
You see here this leaderboard and the points look a little bit different relative to what we saw before, because remember that the top 10 athletes after Mesa that don't already have a pro card ticket to Copenhagen will earn the qualification to that World Fitness Finals in Copenhagen, Denmark. So you take all of the signed pro athletes out of the mix here, and you're left with this leaderboard with Colton Mertens being the highest finishing athlete out of Tour Stop 1 to earn the maximum amount of points relative to his peers that don't have that pro card. So you see, even though they may not be in the top 10 or maybe even in the top 20, as long as they're in the top 10 in this leaderboard relative to the other athletes that don't have pro cards, they're in a good spot and have a great opportunity to get themselves to Copenhagen once things shake out in Mesa.
Seth, top of that leaderboard. He's just winning everything at the moment. Colton Mertens, what is setting him apart?
Yeah, Colton Mertens, the biggest thing that separates him, I think, is his own determination. As one of the shortest, if not the shortest athlete in the field, he does not let that become an excuse or a factor in his performances. He does play that to his advantage. So I actually, on the desk show, was lucky enough to predict him to win workout number 3 with the gymnastics complex into the front squats, because his cycle rate is just so fast compared to others on movements like that. He's unmatched. He knows that. He takes advantage of that and he pushes the pace. In fact, I think he is smart enough that he's baiting others to try to keep up with him, which is a very pro tactic that I think he's using in the workouts that he can. And then on the other side of things, he knows that he has big weaknesses. He cannot climb the rope as fast as some of his bigger counterparts. He just can't cover distance as fast as them in different movements. And so that's something he's well aware of. He's immediately back to the drawing board on that. He is quite determined to move his way up, earn his pro card, which in my opinion, there's almost no doubt he's going to make that happen for himself at the end of the season. So yeah, he just is that one person that didn't get signed as a pro to start that's going to really, and he's called the shot many times, he's going to show people what professional is in his own words. So
I know his actual words were, I'm going to come in like a wrecking ball.
That
Cue
too.
the DJ. I came in like a wrecking ball. And that is the first and last time I will sing on a podcast. But he was awesome. And I love that kind of tenacity that he brings to the competition floor and that he brings to like the media afterwards. You know, he is his own man, unapologetic and so unbelievably talented. And we get to watch that for 2 more stops, fingers crossed. Tommy, whilst Colton has made it into kind of that top page, so we say, there are a couple of lads on the cut line and they really impressed in the Challenger division. Talk us through who they are and where we could expect to see them in the future.
Yeah, if you look just outside of the top 10 there, you see 3 athletes from the Challenger division in Indianapolis, Tudor Magda, Roland Goldbaum, and Ty Jenkins. And really for them, so you have to think, okay, well, we didn't get into the pro division. We have to focus on this competition. Let's maximize the points available to us because those the points from the Challenger division at a tour stop still play into the overall season. Well, mission accomplished. They finished on the podium, especially for Tudor, who maximized it out. But then you have to reset for Mesa now because you want to make sure that you get into the pro division on this next qualifier. Get into the pro division, give yourself a chance to get to Copenhagen because that's what really becomes the focus is can I maximize the amount of points that are available to me in Mesa to give myself a shot to be inside that top 10 for the race to Copenhagen with the assumption that if I get into the pro division, I'm likely going to unseat one of those athletes ahead of me in the top 10. So, and if I can even do something like Chris Ibarra did, where just getting in that last position in the qualifier and then outperforming my qualifier position once I get to the tour stop, that's going to set you up nicely. And for Ty and Tudor, maybe even Roldan, if they're able to repeat that, what Chris did, they're going to get to Copenhagen. And then now you're in the driver's seat with double points available in Copenhagen to potentially earn a pro card if you maybe have your Disney moment and really throw down in Denmark.
But how great is it that we are seeing the teen athletes of only like a year ago, 2 years ago, being able to come into a competition like the Challenger division and have the opportunity to really push themselves and step it up. I feel like it becomes a really good breeding ground for talent to test themselves against the best in the world.
It's a really good tactile feedback point, right? Because even if, the qualifier didn't quite go the way that you want, there's still an opportunity to step onto the competition floor, get a taste of the environment, see those other athletes in the back, warm up, get all of those competition feels in a very real way that still matters too, because you still have other athletes that are trying to take points from you in that Challenger division and know that, hey, if you walk away like Tudor with that first place position, there's a high likelihood that if I have a good qualifier next time, that I'll be back in control of my season.
I think one thing that is like totally understated from an athlete perspective is that you have to get reps at live competition and high level live competition. I don't think anyone knows what it's like until you've done it to stand out there on the floor, have them go 3, 2, 1, go, and then have all other 9 competitors around you go at 100 miles an hour past you. And you go, oh my God, this has gotten so real now. This is not my local throwdown. This is not my in-gym qualifier. And that feeling and those nerves and everything of competing live has to be done over and over and over again until you feel confident enough to think that you can hang and push with them. So it's great reps for them.
Great reps, and it's game on. Let's see who's chasing that pro card.
So you can see the top 20 that currently are in a position to take a pro card if the season ended today. But of course it doesn't. We have Mesa and then we have the finals in Copenhagen. And so one thing that I want to talk about in terms of pro cards is that pros currently holding a card have a very large advantage on the field. A pro that takes last place in the pro division will still earn over 250 points per, which is more than the challengers again are going to get. And then all they have to do is have a very strong finish in the finals in Copenhagen where they have double points. So if you see some of the pros that are outside that top 20 right now, who knows where they're at in the season? They may be waiting, training for that final to make that the peak of their season where they could take a top 10 finish and have it be worth just as good as finishing top 10 at the previous 2 tour stops. So those holding a pro card have a massive advantage for those that are clawing their way in to take one away. And I think that has to be known and appreciated by both sides of things. Pros may play things a little bit differently because they're in the driver's seat, whereas challengers on each level have to be willing to put it all out there to have a chance to take one in future seasons.
It's very exciting stuff, isn't it? It gives us so many more storylines to delve into. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We have delved in deep to the men's challenger and pro division. And coming up next on episode 8 of On the Pulse, we're going to be delving into the women's field as well. But look, the challenger qualifier number 2 is coming your way on July 2nd to the 8th. The registration opens May 19th. Make sure you mark that date in your diary. Competitor registration for Mesa is June 1st. Wow, that's not long to go, is it? Do you know what? It feels like it's going to come even sooner. It's going to be Tour Stop number 2, Mesa, Arizona, August 29th to the 31st. And of course, Christmas in Copenhagen, Denmark. I'm not sure it gets more special than that as our tour finals descend on Europe, December 18th to the 21st. Scan those QR codes and make sure you secure your tickets because it is going to be a festival of fitness. My name's Laura Smith, Seth Page, Tommy Marquez bringing you On the Pulse Ep 7. It's been a total blast. And we'll see you very shortly because we've still got the girls to dissect. See you soon.